Hello, I am Peter. I will be one of the official presenters for this channel. You will meet my co-presenter shortly. This week we will talk about Jamaica in the 1980s. Now let me hand over to Pat, my co-presenter.
Thanks, I am delighted to talk about the 1980s in Jamaica. What a decade it was for Jamaica, so let us begin. Remember, our sources can be located in the description section of our video.
Thanks, Pat. So let's get started. Remember to hit that subscribe icon. Life in Jamaica. During the 1980s, a decade of transformation and challenge. The 1980s in Jamaica represented a pivotal period marked by dramatic political shifts, economic hardship, vibrant cultural expressions, and social transformation. Following the turbulent 1970s, the decade began with significant political change and continued to shape Jamaican society in profound ways that still resonate today.
Now let us examine the political landscape and economic struggles. The decade opened with a dramatic political transition when the Jamaica Labour Party, JLP, led by Edward Seaga, won what was described as the epic general election of 1980, defeating Michael Manley's People's National Party, PNP. This election marked a reversal of the socialist policies that had characterized Jamaica in the 1970s as the country shifted toward market-oriented reforms. Despite promises of economic revival, the 1980s proved economically challenging for most Jamaicans. From 1981 to 1985, the economy stagnated with real GDP growing only 1% over that 5-year period. The country's debt burden exploded under Seaga's administration, with the debt-to-GDP ratio ballooning from 63% in 1980 to a staggering 262% by 1989. International financial institutions played a significant role in shaping economic policy. Throughout the early 1980s, monetary policy remained subordinated to financing large public sector deficits, with direct controls distorting credit allocation and interest rate structures. By late 1985, banking legislation was revised to strengthen the central bank's policy mandate and supervisory functions, shifting toward more market-oriented instruments. The economic challenges were compounded by the departure of major foreign companies. ExxonMobil pulled out of Jamaica, followed by major bauxite companies. The bauxite alumina sector, once the backbone of the Jamaican economy, saw exports plummet from approximately 12 million tons to about 6 million tons between 1981 and 1985, with earnings dropping from $670 million to $280 million. Daily life reflected these economic hardships. Gas shortages led to long lines at stations, causing people with urgent business to wait for hours. An auction system was introduced where those requiring foreign exchange for business had to apply to the Bank of Jamaica twice weekly on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The economic situation became so dire that in 1985, a ship captain refused to unload crude oil at Montego Bay until payment was received, forcing government officials to urgently collect U.S. dollar donations from private businessmen to pay the bill.
This was a difficult time and it had a social impact which led to austerity measures. The Seaga administration implemented severe austerity measures, particularly after the 1983 snap election, which the PNP did not contest, leaving the JLP with all 60 parliamentary seats and no formal opposition. These measures included closure of educational institutions including Moneague Teachers College and Jamaica School of Agriculture, shuttering or downgrading several hospitals including Ulster Springs, Spaldings, Alexandria, and Noel Holmes, abolishment of the Community Health Aid Program, dismantling of local government structures, leaving parish councils with minimal responsibilities, closure of sugar estates including Duckenfield and Gray's Inn, public sector downsizing that resulted in approximately 18,000 workers losing their jobs. These policies contributed to increased street vending as displaced workers sought survival through informal commerce. The period saw heightened migration and brain drain as professionals and skilled workers left the island in search of better opportunities. This exodus continued a trend that had begun in the late 1970s when many from the business class fled to the United States, Canada, and England due to economic reasons and political fears.
Yes, the 1980s was indeed a decade where violence and political tensions could be felt and seem to have made connections with the 1970s. The late 1970s and early 1980s were marked by significant political violence in Jamaica. The period from 1974 to 1980 was described as rife with political violence, with gangs linked to the country's two parties, locked in an urban paramilitary conflict that killed, injured, and displaced thousands of people. Many Jamaicans during this time were frightened by a creeping fear, as they perceived a fast disappearance of personal freedoms and safety. This violence stemmed partly from the ideological clash between the Democratic Socialist PNP and the conservative JLP. The introduction of high-powered weapons into our politics, birthed and spawned during this period, resulted in an unending continuum of violence and death trails. The political tensions reflected deeper divisions in Jamaican society, though efforts at reconciliation were made, such as the iconic 1978 One Love Peace concert, where Bob Marley brought together rival political leaders on stage.
But we should not only focus on the negatives of the 1980s, as we had some good times as well. Despite the economic and political challenges, the 1980s represented a cultural golden age, particularly in music. This period is often described as the golden age of dancehall, when Rastafarianism began giving way to Jamaica's burgeoning rum-fueled music culture with its DJs and MCs. Reggae music dominated the airwaves in dance halls, with sound systems playing from late afternoons until the following mornings, unimpeded by noise restriction laws that would come later. Music permeated everyday life, playing in the buses, the taxis, blaring out of restaurants and shops, on well-worn mixtapes and cassette recordings of live dance sessions. This vibrant musical culture provided not just entertainment, but also served as a form of salvation and escape for many Jamaicans facing difficult circumstances. Dances during this period were reportedly less violent than in later years. The dancehall scene was characterized by distinctive fashion and style, with photographs from the era showing striped waistcoats and hats tipped just so. For many Jamaicans, reggae music and dancehall culture provided an essential creative outlet and social space during challenging times.
Now let us look at daily life and social dynamics. Daily life in 1980s Jamaica reflected both traditional values and changing social dynamics. Family structures and parenting approaches varied by social class. Research indicated that parents from lower socioeconomic backgrounds often emphasized obedience and manners, seen as necessary for social mobility, while middle-class families were more likely to support children's autonomy by encouraging self-direction, assertiveness, and independence. Jamaican parenting was predominantly characterized by authoritarian styles with strict obedience expectations and disciplinary practices that included corporal punishment, shaming, and psychological control. However, there were class differences, with older, affluent parents with a higher level of education, using less punitive approaches that included the removal of privileges and reasoning. School experiences provide a window into daily life during this period. Lunchtime was described as a ceremonial sort of engagement and a special occasion. School meals typically featured rice with curry chicken, usually the more affordable back part of the chicken. Economic disparities were evident even at school, as some children couldn't afford lunch while others traveled long distances home to eat. Popular snacks included patties and hot sugar buns from local bakeries like Hilton Bakery. The cost of living in the 1970s and early 1980s was much lower than in later decades. Bread that once cost around $1 Jamaican dollar later cost more than $300 JD, and bus fare increased from just a cent to nearly $100 JD. This dramatic inflation reflects the economic deterioration that occurred over the decades following this period. One thing is sure, Jamaicans like to migrate, and the 1980s was not different. The economic and political challenges of the 1980s accelerated migration patterns that had begun in the previous decade. The exodus initially included the business class and professionals seeking economic opportunities and political stability abroad. As conditions worsened under Seaga's administration, migration and brain drain gained momentum. Jamaican communities abroad, particularly in the United Kingdom and United States, grew substantially during this period. Despite challenges faced in these countries, the Jamaican diaspora's resilience and determination helped to build a bridge between the island and its global community. These immigrant communities maintained cultural ties to Jamaica while adapting to their new environments. Pat and myself would like to summarize this video by saying that life in 1980s Jamaica was characterized by striking contrasts: political transformation alongside economic hardship, cultural vibrancy amidst social struggles, and traditional values coexisting with changing social dynamics. The decade began with promises of economic revival that largely went unfulfilled, as structural adjustment policies and austerity measures took their toll on ordinary Jamaicans. Yet within this challenging context, Jamaican culture, particularly music, flourished, with reggae and dancehall providing not just entertainment but identity, community, and spiritual sustenance. The resilience of Jamaicans, both on the island and in diaspora communities, became a defining characteristic of this transformative decade. Let me say thanks for joining us, and remember to subscribe. The legacy of the 1980s continues to shape Jamaica today, from its economic structures and political divisions to its cultural expressions and social patterns. Understanding this pivotal decade provides crucial insight into contemporary Jamaican society and its ongoing challenges and achievements.